who, in your mind, who's the starting other guard?
First of all, did you say Oubre Jr.? Come on, bro. It's Oubre Jr. Man, get it together. First of all, you got to get the names right.
Okay.
You get your names right for all these stats
Well,
you do?
first
You
of
can't
all,
get the names right?
You know, Anthony wants the big. Everyone's got the big three. Anthony wants like the big 10.
Five would do. Just give me a starting five.
What do you think? Like,
Okay. All right. Stop the shenanigans.
all of a sudden.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Matter of Stats podcast. The fellas all with you tonight. And as you can see, we are very excited to welcome a special guest with us this week. He is the host, founder, and CEO of the LA Football Network, where he covers USC, UCLA, the Rams, and the Chargers. He is also the host of the Salute to Troy and the Rams Skinny on the LA Football Network, and locally on 1090 AM radio, the Mightier. Please welcome the LA football guru himself, Mr. Ryan Dyrud. Ryan, thanks for coming on the pod, man.
What's up, fellas? Thanks so much for having me. Thanks for that intro. What the quite the byline that you guys gave me there, so I appreciate it. But happy to be on with you. We've got Paul Rudd over here, the Eagles fan. We've got Panthers fan. We've got the Lions. So I think we're gonna have some fun tonight. So thanks for having me on.
Oh my gosh, that it's so funny. I hear the Paul all the time. People say you look like Paul Rudd, and you can't even see my hair. I think it's even worse when you see my hair. But I don't see it. I don't see it.
A few years ago, we called him Gasol. He had the longer hair like Gasol did, and a little bit thicker beard and stuff. So he had the Gasol look going on. He looked pretty.
Yeah. Hey, but I'll take it. I'll take Paul Rudd all day. Are you kidding me? I'll take that resume all day.
I was on a live show once with a buddy of mine that does Niners content, and I swear he looked like Tim Tebow. So I called him Tim Tebow, and he's like, I've never heard that before. And now he hits me up all the time. He's like, bro, no one will shut up and stop calling me Tim Tebow, all because of you on that one show. So
nice.
There we go.
Yeah, this guy's been Paul Rudd for a minute. Yeah, you've been Paul Rudd for like 20 years, so it's all good.
Well, if Paul Rudd ever reaches out to us, I'll make sure you get the credit.
Perfect. But yeah, happy to be on with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Well, yeah, thank you. Like I said, we definitely appreciate you being on the show, and we'll jump in like we normally do with our headlines, and then we'll get into some fun and exciting football talk with you. So, gentlemen, you ready?
Let's go.
All right, let's do it. So our sports headlines will lead off, of course, with some New York Jets football news. They activated quarterback Aaron Rodgers last week. He began practicing. Doubtful if he'll play this season, but at least he's cleared and back on the football field. In some USC basketball news, Bronny James was cleared to resume basketball activities as well. So there's some rumors that he might make his debut Sunday for the Trojans. So that's kind of fun, exciting news. The college football playoffs, which of course we will touch on with Ryan here shortly, they set their final four. So Michigan, number 1 seed, will face off against number 4 Alabama, and number 2 seed Washington will play number 3 seed Texas. So we'll definitely have a lot to say about that. Rams rookie wide receiver Puka Nacua, he set the Rams single season receiving yards record last weekend. So quite a year he's having. Also, some other Final Four news of the NBA variety, the inaugural in-season tournament where the teams will face to win the NBA Cup. They crowned their top 4 teams as a quarterfinals finished just the other day. So the 4 teams will head to Vegas. The Bucks will play the Pacers in the East semifinal, and the Lakers, who survived the Suns the other night, will face one of Kobe's 17 B teams, the Pelicans, in the other Vegas semifinal in the Western Conference.
17 B teams.
See, Ryan don't know. And then our weekly NFL recap, where we touch on our local teams, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Lions, Billy's team snuck out a win over the weekend. Aaron, our super producer extraordinaire, MMA guru, his Jags lost a tough one on Monday Night Football. The Panthers, they surprisingly, Kobe, lost again. So
he's like, I'm out.
and I think that's it. I think those were the only teams
I believe your Eagles lost too as well, sir.
I don't recall that game. Are you sure about that? Yeah, that slipped my mind. Huh? Maybe, yeah. Yeah, funny. I don't recall that one. I guess that never happened.
I think it slipped the Eagles' mind too, because I don't think they showed up for it. So
yeah, I think you're right. I think we'd all like to forget it. Yeah, the Niners, they certainly they destroyed us in the second half. But anyways, that's our headlines, gentlemen. What do you guys think?
Unfortunately for Aaron, the Jags lost twice. Unfortunate for the QB getting that ankle injury. So we'll see what the x-rays say and stuff like that. But yeah, that's a tough blow for them if he can't come back anytime soon.
Yeah, I was seeing a meme that was like all the golf carts in Florida, and
yeah, I saw that.
Couldn't get one.
He's like limping all the way back to the locker room. Like, dude.
There was I saw a meme of, it was the Austin Powers scene where the guy's trying to back the thing in the hallway, and they're saying that's what the equipment staff must have just been stuck in the hallway trying to turn the golf cart around.
The 20-point turn. Oh man! Hey, good news about Bronny James, man. Like, hopefully he comes back and no more setbacks, and good for him. That'll be exciting to see what he can do for USC.
Yeah, for sure, Ryan. What's the atmosphere like? I know you cover football and for USC, but for basketball, what's the atmosphere like for Bronny there, in USC?
Yeah, I think people are hyped. I mean, obviously that's a big get, and obviously everyone knows who his dad is, but everyone's hyped about it. Hopefully he'll come back. But even Isaiah Collier, who was the #1 overall recruit on the team, they're an actual good squad. And I know they had that bad loss against Irvine, but everyone was pretty much out that game. So, I mean, this is everyone jokes, that they're a basketball school too. So I think there's a lot of excitement around this team.
Mm-hmm. Go. Yeah, and as far as the tournament goes, we're all pretty impressed of the fact that the in-season tournament has turned out the way it has. Because I think when this season started, we were all like, even players were like, "What the hell is going on?" We don't even know what's happening. No one knows the rules. No one knows what's happening. But last couple of days, everyone's been excited. Everyone's been pumped about it. So I think everybody's been happy with the way it's turned out so far.
Yeah, I mean, you've been seeing over the last couple of days, a lot of the media outlets and Twitter reporting the early returns, and the ratings are through the roof, which this is exactly what the NBA was hoping to be able to supplement some of the, the letdown or drag of the early part of the season in November and December, where no one really picks up and really gets into the NBA until after Christmas. And it's done exactly what they had hoped it would do. You're talking, million shares, 85% up viewership, 89% up viewership in a lot of these games. Way watched, obviously more than any other random game in the middle of November or early December. So it's been a huge success for the NBA. And I can't imagine it's going to go anywhere now.
Yeah, I was against it. I wasn't a big fan of it, but after seeing how the games are going, how players are getting up for it, and more competitive, and how the fans are interacting, on the in the games, the crowd's getting into it and stuff. So yeah, it's a lot more exciting than I thought it was. So I'm happy that it's going the way it is. So
yeah, for me, I just didn't really understand the purpose of it when it was starting off, but I think as you said, Anthony, bringing in more viewership for this kind of NFL heavy part of the sports here.
Exactly.
I think it served its purpose. So yeah, it's gotten me interested, at least knowing what is the point of this. That's drawn interest in. So I think it served its purpose.
Yeah. All right. So why don't we jump into our next segment here, of course, with Ryan here. We want to talk a little football, USC, UCLA, NFL, got all kinds of exciting stuff, college football playoffs, like we mentioned earlier. So we'll jump right in. So, Ryan, wanted to start off, of course, with our local teams, USC, UCLA, high expectations this year for USC, of course, like every year, but I think especially this year they were, expecting really high returns with everyone, back in the fold. Both schools got off to great starts, but finished with subpar seasons, particularly USC, of course. What do you think went wrong for each of the two schools? You can start with either one.
Yeah, for USC, obviously everyone knows about how the defense performed, and it kind of started when Coach Riley decided to bring back Alex Grinch after that Tulane loss in the Cotton Bowl. That kind of set the precedent, I think, for what the season was going to be in terms of defensive play. But it was a weird season because the first year they so exceeded expectations, winning 11 games and, going from 4 wins to 11 wins. And obviously Caleb winning the Heisman and getting a New Year's Six game, playing the Pac-12 title game. And so then they go into the next year with all these heightened expectations, and there wasn't a huge in terms of, the defensive changes. And then we're building from the ground up still, even in that short time. And so I think there was a factor of things that went wrong. But I think also when you look at the schedule, that year one, they just didn't really play a tough schedule. And in year two, they played a gauntlet of a schedule, especially that back end. When you see they played Arizona, Notre Dame, Arizona, Utah, Washington, and Oregon back to back to back to back to back. I mean, that's got to be one of the toughest schedules in college football. And obviously they didn't come out unscathed. So I think it's a combination of the defensive, scheme and poor play there. And then just the schedule just was not fitting. Like it would have been, honestly, guys, and this is kind of what Riley said a few times in interviews, and a lot of people tore him apart for it, but I kind of understood it. He said, look, I'm paraphrasing, but like if we had this schedule in year one and won 6 ball games, and then in year two had last year's schedule and won 11 ball games, everyone would say, okay, everything's right on track. We're doing what we need to do. But because it was reversed, It seems like the program took a huge step backwards. And in some ways it did defensively, but I think we'll talk about it maybe here in a minute. But the changes they've made now on defense, the recruiting prowess they're doing with this transfer portal, I think they'll bounce back. So, big expectations, big letdown, unfortunately. But we'll see kind of how they go over the next month in terms of, recruiting and adding to that roster. And then in terms of UCLA, kind of they lose DTR and Charbonnet, but other than that, they brought everyone back on defense. They brought a lot of guys back on offense. Their defense went from 87th in the country to 11th in the country. Offensively, they were just a mess. They could not get consistent quarterback play. Chip Kelly's play calling was suspect at best, especially when you have a freshman 18-year-old and you're putting him in bad situations. I mean, I don't know how much UCLA football you guys watched, but he had 3 games in a row with opening drive pick sixes. It's like one of the first times it's ever happened. And as a coach, it's like maybe we don't put him in that situation. Let's run the ball against these defenses to start off and get off the field in positive light. So honestly, shocked Chip Kelly is still the head coach. I'm not shocked, I guess, in the way that UCLA runs football. Obviously there's a lot of talk about how they don't put a lot of money in the football program and stuff of that nature. But just with the way the team reacted, with the way the fan base has reacted, I mean, it's been rough that he is not only back, but they lose Deonton Lynn. Dante Moore hits the transfer portal. A lot of their key players on defense are going to the NFL draft. They've already lost 3 other guys in the portal. So it might be a tough couple of years for UCLA.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's funny. You touched on, Chip Kelly, and obviously, he was, his Oregon lore goes to the NFL, and, we know that, the kind of up and down debacle he had with, my Eagles when he was there. Kind of surprisingly gets the UCLA gig, and it seemed like he was on the hot seat. Like it seemed like 2 years ago he was gone, like he was going to be gone. And then they had that kind of interesting year where they looked like they were turning things around, right, heading in the right direction. Chip Kelly was getting some praise for maybe like, oh, look what he's doing now. He's turning the program around. And then this year certainly kind of seemed like, they took a major step backwards. And you mentioned Moore, who we'll talk about a little bit later. It looked like he kind of was really flashy, got off to a good start. Like those first, few games, there was a lot of hype around him. And then things kind of settle in, defenses get better, schedule gets tougher, and then, you get what you get.
I think, I don't know about you guys, but I think Chip Kelly, he was, and from Oregon, and then after Oregon, he tried to go to Philly, and then he came to UCLA trying to run the same type of offense he had, in Oregon, but he didn't have the same type of players. So I don't know if it was, in my opinion, I don't know if it was him not adjusting to what the talent he had on his team, or, it was like my way or the highway. I don't know what the setback has been on those teams, but it's not working.
Yeah, I think he definitely, in a way, that's been one of his struggles, is not adjusting. Like, it's just, he's going to stick to what he's going to do, and you better learn it, or we're just going to keep writing it out. And what's funny, and I like Chip Kelly. Going into last year, I was a supporter of his. Now I'm kind of off that island, just based on how this year went. But when you really look historically, like, he's a guy that, there's some praise I get, like the offense that he created, but in reality, he was only at Oregon for 4 years. He had he had 2 really good seasons. Obviously, one really good season where Marcus Mariota won the Heisman and whatnot. But that's really it. It's like this guy's had 20 years of excellence, and now is just kind of on the downfall. Like, he's basically had 3 to 4 good coaching seasons in his whole resume. And so it's always interesting how much, praise everyone talks about. And I'm not saying you guys, but praise everyone brings up in Oregon. It's like, well, it was 3 years, 4 years. So he hasn't really proven a whole lot. And then here at UCLA, there's obviously challenges at UCLA with recruiting in terms of, different obstacles that, being a UCLA student athlete carries. But this was year 6, and it's like that you get over those obstacles. I get it in year 2 or 3. Year 6, you need to put on a good product, and losing to Arizona State was inexcusable. And then losing the way they lost to Cal at home in that last game, like, those were just bad looks on the program. And the last thing I'll say, I don't want to hog too much time, but what the interesting thing, I think the only reason why he is back, aside from money, is that there's a lot of rumors going around that UCLA's athletic director is kind of on his way out, really wants to get back to the Midwest. Obviously, the Ohio State athletic director is retiring after this year. That's his mentor. That's where he came from. So there's that piece of it, of him. I'm not saying he said this, but him being like, why am I going to go through the process of hiring when I'm on my way out anyway? The chancellor of UCLA is retiring after this year, so they got to get a new chancellor. So it just seems like to have a new chancellor, a new AD, and a new head coach all at the same time maybe wasn't the direction they wanted to do. So bring him back, and then when they get those new pieces and those new people can make those decisions, is probably my guess is what they were thinking.
Yeah. No, I think those are all, excellent points. USC, obviously a little more of the, the bigger dog, here in, in the city, of course. Caleb, you talked about, great. Heisman last year, high expectations for this team. Obviously, we know the defense was terrible, but why can't Lincoln Riley coach defense? Like, what is the, we saw it in Oklahoma, we've seen it now here for a couple of seasons. What do you think is the real reason why the defense just seems to follow him, negatively?
Yeah, it's the $1 million question, but for whatever reason, those air raid guys just have a lot of pride and not having good hard defenses. So I think this hire they made with Deonton Lynn was a tremendous hire, and he's saying all the right things, Coach Riley is, in that, like, we're putting defense first, we're putting every resource into it, we have everything at our disposal. So we'll see if they make that jump, but through his coaching tenure, he's never had a top flight defense, and it doesn't make any sense to me, because you think if you're an offensive guy, you see that defense in practice every single day. You should be able to say, like, if we can exploit this so easily, I'm guessing other teams can too. Let's make a fix of this. Yeah. So I don't totally understand that, but I think also, and this is more so my opinion, but Alex Grinch, and even back to his other, Alex Grinch was a friend of his. And anyone that works with friends, sometimes it's hard to be overly critical, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll make it work, we'll figure it out. And you need that. Sometimes you need that, like, pushback of your coaching staff of certain things. So I think with Deonton Lynn, they'll hopefully get that. That's the hope. But to answer your question, I don't know if it's pride. I don't know if it's just no one has pushed back against him. But hopefully that'll change here now with this new hire.
So moving on to the college playoff, Alabama, they beat undefeated Georgia. There was a little chaos going into the committee making the decisions on who's going to make it into the bowl games. Do you think they made the correct decision?
Yeah, I want to hear your guys' takes too, so we'll have to go around the panel. But here's my thought. I think it's clear that if you want the 4 current potential best teams right now, I get it. Like I think we can probably all agree Alabama right now is better than Florida State because of what's transpired. But that being said, you go undefeated, you win your conference, you should be in. I mean, I think Florida State should get in. Otherwise, why the hell do you even play the games? And they won their final 2 games without their quarterback. They won the ACC championship against a really good Louisville team without their quarterback. They might get blown out, but they did everything they had to do. And I think if you start putting on this beauty pageant of who looks better on the eye test or who isn't injured, I don't fully like that. I get it because, yeah, I agree. Alabama probably is better right now. But at the same time, Alabama played Chattanooga November 18th. That automatically disqualified for me. If you play a division FBS school in November, I'm not for it. So what do you guys think?
I mean, if you're looking at strength of schedule, I mean, Florida State, I think, had one of the toughest schedules in FBS, even in, I guess you could call it preseason. So I think Florida State should have been in. I don't know. I don't know what team. I can't decide what team should have been out. I mean, I've never been an Alabama fan, so biased, I would say Alabama out. Not just because I'm a Michigan fan, just because, I just not a big fan of Alabama. Alabama always seems to find a way in, no matter if they lose a game or two, and somehow they always manage to get their way in, which I don't think is fair. Texas won outright. Florida State won their game outright, and just because someone gets injured here or there, I don't think the kids or the players should be penalized for that. I think they should have a chance to play. If you get in, anyone has a chance. You get in the playoffs, you have a chance, no matter what. Anything can happen. You still have to play. You still have to go out and prepare and win a game, no matter how good you are, how bad you are. So, I mean, I think Florida State got a little bit of the shaft, but that's just my opinion. And I think Texas might have too. So, I mean, not Texas. Texas made it in. My bad.
Yeah. Well, you made a good point, Ryan, that, if you go, eye test is one thing, but also when undefeated, that's an eye test too, right? You got the goal is to win the games. And it's tough for Florida State because, they go undefeated, they win their conference, they're a Power 5 school. I get it. The ACC was not a strong overall conference this year in comparison to some of the other ones. But when you're talking about a committee that is looking at maybe not necessarily, there's a difference between who are the best 4 teams and who are the most deserving 4 teams, and then who's going to create the best matchups. I think that's really what this comes down to.
That's what they're looking at. They're looking at.
Like Ryan said, I think the problem is, even though you got an undefeated school that's getting ousted by 2 one-loss teams, the committee didn't want to put Florida State in because they're just afraid they were going to get rolled. And part of that is because they're on their 3rd string quarterback. But also part of that is, I think this was Stephen A. Smith or somebody on ESPN that said this a few days ago. Part of it is what happened last year with TCU, because TCU was undefeated, right? They get in, and Georgia beat them, whatever, I don't forget what it was, like 54-10 or something. They just destroyed them, So I think part of that also weighs into the decision. And is that fair? Probably not, but that's the reality. And like you just said, Billy, you don't like Alabama, but Alabama moves the needle because people love Alabama.
Because they're Alabama.
People hate Alabama. And are they deserving? Yeah, they're deserving. They got 1 loss. They're a good team. Like Ryan said, they're playing much better now than they were 5-6 weeks ago. So it's tough when you set that precedence because you think, okay, now if we go undefeated and that's still not good enough to get in, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. It's all about competition and putting the best field out there. I don't know. Did you guys happen to see what JJ Watt put up? He's like, give Michigan and Washington a bye and let the other 4 fight it out. Pretty much, I didn't see. I don't remember exactly what he put, but that's basically what he was saying. And that would have been nice to see. You know, give the 2 top teams the bye and then let these other 4 fight it out and see who gets in. But you know,
and that's what it'll be. That's what it'll be next year. So luckily we won't have to have this issue anymore because you'll have the 12 teams and the first 4, I think, get a bye. So then you'll get that. But yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate for Florida State, and it just, you know, college is so hard too because it's all about who you play, right? It's all about your schedule. And like I said, I made a joke about it, but it's like every year SEC teams, and maybe I have a little bias too, so maybe I'm with you, Billy, but every year it's like SEC teams schedule these cupcake games late in the season just so they don't get injured, they can stat pad some stuff, and it's like that should be taken into account. If you're playing a Chattanooga the second to last game of the season, where Florida State's playing a premier ACC team, or someone like USC's playing Oregon and Eugene, or all these different situations of all these teams where you can maybe potentially either get a loss or lose a premier player like Florida State did, like you shouldn't be penalized for that because the other team is playing some cupcake that they're just going to get an easy win on their resume and go into it. So, but obviously that's not what the committee thinks.
Do you think this is like the all solution, like next year, how the format's going to be, or do you think it's going to be like a testing deal?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be way better, obviously, with 12. It's going to add more games, so I think that'll be the big conversation if we start seeing some injuries in those games, or obviously a lot of these players are thinking about the draft and they got to play 3 extra playoff games. So is that an issue with that? So I think that'll be more the conversation in terms of like what's best for college football. I think it'll probably be the best solution they could do. But the conversation will surround more about guys trying to go to the NFL and whether it's smart for them to play in them or not, and risk injury and stuff like that.
That's the other thing. That's a good point you make right there, as far as guys going to NFL and their last year, they're looking to be, people are telling me you're going to be the top 10 draft or whatever. That's a good point you make too. It's how is this going to affect all those scenarios? So, you know, Caleb's not going to play in the bowl game, as we all heard. So that's something that has gone on for the last, like, I don't know, if I remember right, 3-4 years or so, that players are starting to bail out of bowl games because they're going to be a top 10, top 15 draft pick. So
the easiest way
will be interesting to see how this goes as far as players staying and playing and whatnot.
Yeah, and this is a whole another debate, so I'm not even saying I believe in one side or the other, but the easiest way to like solve that and have these games still like mean something these players play, because, you know, Rose Bowl, for instance, each team, each program gets like $3 million each or something. Like, it's a ridiculous amount of money. So the easiest way you do that is you do a rev share with the players in those games, and it's like, okay, I'll play, because even if I get injured, I'm making $900K to play in that game or something like that. So that's the easiest way for them to solve it.
Yeah.
As you can probably tell, I haven't really talked much because, you know, I don't really know too much football. You know, I barely watch any kind of college ball or pro football. But
the one-win Panthers fan doesn't know too much about football.
Where'd your quarterback play last year? Do you know that?
Bama, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
In the playoff.
Yeah. Look at that. Good job.
But I'm just curious because you know, Colorado got off to a hot start this year, right? And I know this isn't on the agenda, so we'll just throw it out there. But what happened with Shedeur Sanders and Colorado? What happened there?
They just weren't that good. I mean, they got an overhyped team. We talk about this all the time on our.
Anthony was hyped. Like the first 2 weeks, Anthony was like blowing me up. He was like putting it in the headlines.
I remember all that.
We got to talk about Colorado, and I'm like, okay, cool, whatever.
Well, because I think the hype is good for college football, but like Ryan said, is like they at some point they were gonna become who they were. They weren't a good team, right? They won one game last year or something like that. But you know, but but that buzz is exciting. I mean, Deion Sanders still brings, something to the table. They were nationally televised, right? People were watching the games. Celebrities were going to the game. So it was good for the sport. But I mean, eventually they were going to start losing.
They beat
All of a sudden,
TCU.
look at this guy.
They beat
Well-
TCU, and like the whole world exploded, and suddenly they're this and that, and
Yeah.
Ryan, and that's the thing that like we that we're not big fans of, with Anthony on this pod is like, he swears like initially, oh yeah, like they're hot, he's on that bandwagon, and then the second that they're not doing anything, he's like, well, we knew that was gonna happen.
Well, here's
what do you like to
How many
say,
of those
Kobe?
guys you know? How many of
Kobe,
those
what do you
guys
like
know?
to say? The shiny new toy syndrome?
Yeah, you got shiny new toy syndrome for sure.
Well,
Anthony's
here's
got
what's so
shiny new
funny.
toy syndrome.
So Ryan,
You
this
weren't
is
alone,
funny. So
Anthony. You weren't alone.
hey, here's what's funny though. So Kobe, who just obviously mentioned that he doesn't watch a ton of college football. He was watching
Or
one of the
football,
games,
period.
and it was like 47-45, and he's like, "Man, this is crazy," and he's like, "This is like amazing," and I'm like, "This is college
USC.
football.
It was USC
Every
Colorado.
game is
It
like
was a fun
this."
game. It was a fun
Yeah.
game. It was a fun game.
Especially if you watch USC this year, that's what every game
Yeah.
was. But yeah, I think too, like the way they were able to deceive people because they played TCU, who was in the national championship the year before. Now we didn't realize TCU was I don't know if you guys can you guys cuss on the show? I don't know if you guys either or not, but they were they were a crappy team. TCU
Yeah.
is not TCU's not bowl eligible. Nebraska's not bowl
Right.
eligible. Colorado State's not bowl eligible. Those were their first 3 wins
Right.
against non-bowl
Yeah.
eligible teams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but at the time, it was like, oh, they beat a team that was just in the Natty. Nebraska's a longtime rival. The Rocky Mountain Showdown with Colorado State, and then they go up to
Mhm.
Eugene, Oregon. And you're like, okay, that's the real Colorado, losing 42-8, and then that was
Right.
the rest of the season. So,
Yeah. Then
But
the wheels fell off the bus.
and like we know
Yeah.
with everything in life, the media knows what to tie their wagon to in terms of money, and they knew Colorado was a money train. So that's
Oh yeah.
That
Come
was that.
on, man.
There you go.
yeah.
De-
I was out,
Deion's
I was
gotta
out
sell
there for the SC
sunglasses,
game.
man.
It was fun.
Yeah.
See? Did you get some of Deion's sunglasses or no? They don't count.
Not his sunglasses, but we were in the we did meet him in the media room after the game. So yeah, it was fun. We were
Yeah.
in Boulder. It was a good time. It was mayhem.
Yeah.
That's
Oh
awesome.
yeah. Well, speaking of mayhem, you guys touched upon it, and Billy brought it up. NIL money, the transfer portal, which is just huge right now. I think I saw something yesterday about the amount of players in the past 3 days that have entered the transfer portal is like a third of every team's roster or something like that, which is just crazy. Good and bad, but UCLA's quarterback, Dante Moore, he obviously announced that he was going to enter the transfer portal. Like we talked about, he had a little bit of an up and down, season similar to Colorado, got off to the hot start and then looked like, freshman. Where do you think he ends up?
If I were to guess, I'd guess Michigan. Just with JJ McCarthy graduating, he's from Detroit. I've heard there's been talks with Michigan. So to me, that makes the most sense. Is that your team, Billy? Michigan? I know you got the
I'm
mindset.
cool with that. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
I could
sir.
live. I could live with that. Yeah.
That's Anthony and I are both Wolverine fans.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
both are.
so-
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like just real quick, the
I don't know
Final
why he's
Four
an Eagles
college
fan.
teams, as long as Ohio State isn't any of the Final Four, I'm good.
There we go.
Yeah, you guys are great. You beat Ohio State and you're in the Final Four. So
As
you guys are
long as
looking great.
Ohio State is out, I'm happy.
No, I
Love it.
want to move on, man. I want to beat Alabama. Can't
That's
stand
a
good game,
Alabama.
Yeah. Another thing we kind of touched on just a bit ago with, the obviously the expanding, college football playoffs here that are going to be, starting up next year. So, as far as I can remember all the way back, we've always had these, these iconic, epic, college football games, just like we had a couple weeks ago, right? Where Michigan, beat Ohio State and, it's like the winners in the playoffs and the losers basically out. Right. So do you think now that we're going to be, expanding to the 12-team playoff, have we seen the end of these exciting, epic, iconic, super meaningful college football games?
Personally, I think we'll see more. And here's why. Because I think the way it's been with this 4 team is, you lose one game, you're basically done. Season's
Right.
done.
Yeah.
You lose one player, you're basically done. Now with this 12 teams, and especially with essentially these 2 mega conferences, like you can probably lose 3 games and still have a shot to get in the playoff. And that's never happened before. A two-loss team has never made the playoff. So I think it'll end up being better because there'll be so much to play for late in the season, even if you are a 2 or 3 loss team. We'll see some new rivalries brewing. I think Penn State USC is going to be a great rivalry. We'll see some different big games. I think that you don't have to be undefeated for it to be meaningful. You can be a 2 or 3 loss team and still have something to play for later on. So in reality, I think we'll see more with this 12 team just because there's more opportunity. There's more room for error, if you will. It'll feel like more of the NFL where you can, you can be a 3-6 Rams team and all of a sudden you're 6-6 and you're in playoff contention. And
In the hunt,
it can be like that in
right.
college where if you lose 2 games in a row, it's not over yet. Like you can turn your season around. Whereas what we've seen up till now is you lose 2 games, that's it. Season over, pack it in. Like you don't even have anything to play for usually.
Oh yeah.
It's gonna be similar to like the NBA play-in, right? Like you barely get in, but then you're in, so you have a shot.
Yeah,
So
once you're in the dance, right? Anything can happen.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, and I like your theory. That's a interesting approach because there's 2 sides to it, right? There's the like similar to the NBA, there's the side of where the regular season doesn't matter because everybody gets in, so nobody cares until you get into the playoffs and then it matters. And then there's your approach, which is like, well, now because you're gonna have more peas in the pod, right? There's going to be more opportunities, so maybe you'll see more competitive games, or at least games that are going to matter, like you said, late in the season that could impact if this team gets in or where they get in, or if you have a bye or don't have a bye. So it's definitely a good way to look at it.
It's always going to be exciting. We're still going to have the rivalry games. I mean, those are always going to be big conference games and stuff like that. So I don't think it's going to take away too much. And it like you said, it's going to be those teams that are going to maybe squeak in that can maybe make an impact and throw some upsets and some wrenches in the pot right there. So that would be pretty interesting to see. Yeah.
Are we speaking of, since you guys are Michigan guys, are we going week 3 Michigan USC at the Big House?
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
We got to go, right? What a game that's going to be.
I mean,
that would.
My dad and I have been dreaming of going to the Big House. It's he hasn't been there. He's from Michigan. He had a house out there, where he grew up, and they, people parked in their big yard and paying to park in the yard and go over to the stadium and stuff. So, that'd be a big thing for him.
That's the week 3. Weather will still be good. USC, Michigan. Not to keep bringing it back to USC, but USC has a wild schedule next year. I don't know if you guys have looked at it, but they have a gauntlet of a schedule. So it'll be interesting to see how they do.
Well, recruiting is going to be huge for them.
Yeah, I mean they play LSU week 1. They get Michigan week 3. They get Penn State, Wisconsin, Notre Dame, Washington. Like they got a pretty brutal schedule. Yeah.
Oh yeah. You want that Big Ten money? Here you go.
That's right. So it'll be fun though.
So we're talking about playoffs and all this stuff. Let's switch over to NFL for a minute. Chargers in LA now. They have a stacked roster. They have a super talented team. What do you think is keeping them from getting over the hump? Is it the coach? They have a super talented team. They just can't seem to get to that next level. What do you think is holding them back?
Yeah, it's obviously what we talk about all the time. It's bizarre how this team just can't perform the way they should. And, I think it's a combination. I do think this coaching staff, in terms of just smarts and scheme, I think they're good coaches. But I think now in year 3 and seeing how this is a 5-7 football team, they're obviously going to need to move on and make a change. I think at some point, like players like last year to me was a phenomenal year for the Chargers with the injuries they had on the offensive line. Justin Herbert battling through cartilage tears in his ribs with missing wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 in Keenan Allen and Mike Williams for most of the season. Josh Palmer missed some time as well. Injuries all along the defense, and they still went 10-7 and made the playoffs. Obviously, they had that huge blunder with, I guess, your producer's team, the Jaguars, which I'm sure he was pumped about. But I thought it was a good year for them. It was a good year that they could build upon. and then this year has regressed immensely. And so I think at some point, players just either lose confidence in what they're being coached. They just don't do their job anymore. They don't trust the process of what they're going to do. And the staff hasn't made enough changes. They've basically said, we're sticking to what we believe can work. And it hasn't been working. Players clearly aren't buying into it anymore. And so even last week, a 6-0 win, the offense was terrible. I mean, I know that I know going back defense, I know the Patriots in 3 straight games have held teams under whatever it is, 10 points. But the offense with that many weapons, I don't care what the injuries they have, like you should be scoring more than 2 field goals against that team, a 2-win team.
Right.
So, and you bring in Kellen Moore. Everyone was like, oh, that's the savior.
Yeah.
You know, they moved from Joe Lombardi. The Chargers offense in terms of total offense is worse this year than it was last year. Which I think is fascinating that no one likes to admit because everyone hated Joe Lombardi so much and loves Kellen Moore. The Cowboys offense, gentlemen, which is crazy, under Mike McCarthy by himself is better this year than it was last year. So it's kind of interesting that I'm not against Kellen Moore, but this offensive guru has actually had worse offenses where he's actually been coaching. And so whether it's too complicated for players, whether that's whatever it may be, it's I know it's frustrating for Chargers fans, but when it's all said and done, I think they'll eventually, barring them winning out and making the playoffs, there'll be a wholesale change to this front office top to bottom, I think.
Yeah, I know a lot of people say Staley's a big problem. I mean, obviously everything runs through him. He makes the final decision on certain plays on the field and stuff, and he's made some questionable decisions as far as crunch time and stuff like that goes. Do you think he's the first one to go, or is it the offensive coordinator, or if Staley goes, does the whole coaching staff go and they revamp? I mean, it's a tough call with all the players that you have on that team. I would love to have a lot of the players. Most NFL teams would love to have a lot of those players. So it's just crazy to see that they're not as competitive as we all thought they would be in that division.
Yeah. So what I would do versus what I think they'll do, I think are 2 different things. What I would do if they lose this game to Denver this weekend, I would fire Brandon Staley and I would make Kellen Moore my interim head coach, because obviously he's a name that always props up, not always, but the last 2 years has propped up as a head coaching candidate. I know your team, Carolina, has expressed potential interest in interviewing Kellen Moore. So you give him the final 4 games as kind of a
good luck.
Yeah. He's all happy over there now. Yeah.
But you give him the final 4 games to see what he's like as the head coach. So it's almost like a little mini resume that the Chargers can say, because they're not going to keep him as OC. If you fire Brandon Staley, he's going to get either hired as a head coach or another staff. So you give him those last 4 games, see what you have with them, see if the team makes any improvement, and then you go into next year and maybe you have at least an idea if Kellen Moore can be your head coach. What I think they'll do is let Brandon Staley finish out the year, regardless of what happens. Move on after the year from Brandon Staley and probably the GM as well, Tom Telesco, and then just do a fresh start going into 24.
Yeah. Well, you're right. I mean, teams hate to fire coaches mid-season. I mean, only the Panthers do that seemingly every year, but most teams don't like to do that. But I like your idea, right? Let's just Lane Kiffin him, right? Leave him right on the tarmac.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I respect him too much to do that. But I mean, yeah, if they lose this game, you can have him just go back to his beautiful home in LA and stay.
Yeah, I mean, all joking aside, I think you definitely, whether it's next week or 6 months from now, they definitely need a new coach, new head coach, and probably a new full coaching staff. But do you think any of it falls on Herbert? Like, have you seen anything out of him this year, maybe that is better, worse? Maybe not seeming the growth and adjustments that maybe you would have expected?
So I get shredded for this all the time because you talk about Herbert with Chargers fans and they come with the pitchforks, like I said earlier. But I think he definitely shoulders some of it. He's a great quarterback, probably in my opinion the best arm in the entire NFL, even better than I think Mahomes and Josh Allen, in my opinion, or at least close to it. Athleticism is off the charts, but in terms of pre-snap reads, in terms of decision making with progressions, like he's not a turnover machine, so he doesn't make bad decisions that way, but he's almost too careful with the ball sometimes. And here's what I mean by that. Like I don't know if you guys watched the Rams game last week, but that Stafford throw to Puka Nacua on the 70-yard touchdown, If you saw the all 22 angle of it, like it was a dime pass over a linebacker in between the safety in stride that went for 70 yards. Justin Herbert has the absolute ability to make that throw, but you watch these route concepts that they draw up, they do stuff like that, and he'll just take the check down every time. And everyone blames the offensive coordinator and the system that takes the check down. In reality, even when Joe Lombardi was here, they were drawing those plays up. He just wouldn't take the shot. And so I think some of that's him being, I don't want to make an interception, but some of that's just him not trusting his ability to make those throws. And then everyone else, though, puts the blame on other people. But when you're going 3 and out 7 straight times, sometimes you got to take the chance and push the ball down the field a little bit. They have less explosive plays this year than they did last year. And I think a lot of that is on Justin Herbert, because when you have that ability, you got to push it down the field.
Yeah, no, you're right. He does, especially on some of the local, radio stations. He does get a little bit of that Charlie check down, stigma to him. So it's not, you're definitely not alone with that take. I've heard it. It definitely floats around that he doesn't, try to take those deep opportunities.
Well, and here's another example of it. It's hard to compare to the GOAT, right? Tom Brady, but Tom Brady was the best pre-snap quarterback we've ever seen, like dissecting the defense pre-snap, knowing exactly where he wanted to go with the football. And I'm not saying Herbert's bad at that, but there's definitely many times or more than not where he won't either make adjustments or won't change his pre-snap read that could lead to a much greater opportunity. Last week, here's a super easy example, is they ran this RPO, and instead of him keeping it to where he would have had the streaking receiver out of the backfield that was literally going to be wide open because the edge guy was crashing down, and they would have had a 70-yard game for a touchdown, he hands it off to Eckler, gets a -2 up the front because they stack the box right there. So it's those little things like that. Like, had he had noticed, and I'm not saying that's easy, I couldn't do that, but that's that next step for him to make, to be that top 10 quarterback, to be that top 5 quarterback. So he's still a top 10 quarterback, but would this team be 5-7 if he was a top 5 quarterback? I mean, they might be 6-6 or 7-5 instead.
Anthony, I know we got another question we got to get into, but Ryan, we know that Caleb Williams, obviously, he's going to be one of the top picks in next year's NFL draft if he declares. What are the chances that my Panthers get their first round pick back from the Bears? And if not,
there's no chance. It's already happened.
This is not the movie Draft Day. It doesn't work that way.
Wishful thinking. But where does Caleb go? Where does he fit in best? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, 0 chances he goes to the Panthers. That would be unless Ryan Pace in Chicago is eating his pancakes like in Draft Day and makes a real interesting move. Where does he fit best versus where do I want him to go, I think are different. You look at the top teams that will have that pick. You look at the Patriots. You look at the Bears. Obviously, it's the Patriots, the history of Tom Brady, but I think Caleb Williams, who I love and I think is phenomenal, but very different mindset than Tom Brady. And I don't know if he would play well under Bill Belichick personally. Now, do we know if Bill Belichick will even be there next year? That's a different story.
Right.
But I don't know how well he would thrive in that situation. The Bears just always seem like a mess. So who's going to be their head coach, depending on who they hire, if they do, which I feel like they'll move on from who they have. And if they go out and get a nice offensive mind, then I think the Bears would be a good fit for him. I mean, he's played in LA. He understands the big city, the media. He didn't necessarily handle it great all year. I don't know how much you guys heard of, him. Some games didn't want to talk to the media after losses and different situations like that. And so he didn't handle that great, and he would go to another big city, but at least he's dealt with it. So I could see Chicago. But in terms of like best situation that would have like an opportunity to get him, I'm trying to think of the top of the draft right now, who would be there. Who do you guys think, or where do you want him to go besides Carolina?
Well, I have a theory, or at least a dream.
Uh-oh, watch out.
So, well, no, not a dream like he's going to go to the Eagles. We're good. I can live with Jalen Hurts. We're all right. But I think what would be ideal if they could find a way to do it is the Commanders trade up to get whatever it takes. If he's going to go 1 or 2, right? Maybe Marvin Harrison goes 1, whatever, right? Let's just wherever he goes. If he goes 1, 2, or 3, wherever he's slotted. if I'm the Commanders, I'm doing whatever it takes to trade up to get him. And then I am taking Eric Bieniemy and I'm sliding him into the head coaching role. And I want to see what Bieniemy and Caleb Williams can look like, because I feel like it would be, a mini version of Bieniemy and Mahomes. And we saw what Bieniemy could do when he was, when he had a guy like Patrick Mahomes. And I think Caleb Williams has a little bit of Mahomes in him as far as like the flash, the ability to make the, kind of crazy, but, on target last minute throw. I think he's a leader in the huddle. I think guys kind of gravitate, towards him. So I'd like to see that kind of a combination. I don't know what you think about that.
Do you know where Caleb Williams is from?
No, I don't offhand. No.
He's from DC. So, I mean, that would be a match made in heaven, I think, for him being originally a DC kid. So, yeah. I think that's a good scenario.
Don't blow up his head. Don't blow up his head.
That's not a bad deal. I mean, do the Rams have anything they could trade up? Because that wouldn't be bad either for the Rams to get Caleb, and he could just stay in LA, and Stafford, if Stafford could play another year, and Caleb can kind of play under him a little bit and then take over afterwards. I mean, Sean McVay's not a bad coach to play under either, with all that young talent the Rams have. I mean, that's just a bunch of young guys that could get along and make something happen.
That would be a fantastic fit. Obviously, they keep winning, so they'd have to trade a lot. But we saw them and Les Snead do that for Jared Goff, right? Traded 2 firsts, 2 2s, 2 3s, whatever it was, to move up to 1 to get Goff when they were sitting at 12 or 13. So if they make the playoffs and they end up in that 20, 21, 22 slot, that'll be a little more challenging. But if they lose a couple here and finish the year, in those teens, I could certainly see that. And the other team that I thought when they were 1-5 was the Denver Broncos. I'm like, oh, that's a match made in heaven with Sean Payton and able to get him. But now they've also gone on a run and are in playoff contention, so they'd have to give up a lot too.
Right.
So
I thought about Denver in the back of my head, but I just don't know with that cold weather and stuff out there. I don't know how that would work out for him too much.
Yeah, he'd
Denver,
be okay.
Chicago,
Carolina, you'd be okay.
You got a decent Kobe. You got a good quarterback. They just got to put something together to make it work for them. They need some talent around them. They need
they have nothing on offense.
They need some pieces to make all that work.
No line.
But he's shown flashes. He's shown flashes of being your guy. You just got to give him some time.
I mean, here's a good example, and I'm not saying he's regressed this much, but when you have no one around you as a quarterback, look at Pat Mahomes this year. Obviously, still has Travis Kelce, and I don't think anyone thinks Pat Mahomes is the Pat Mahomes that he has been as of late. I mean, got to have some of those weapons around you, and Bryce Young has nothing.
Hey, that kid Rice on KC, he's gonna be something. He's showing a lot of potential. He's gonna be something.
Yeah, they've got some good young kids, so they just need to hang on to the football.
Yeah. It's hard to it's hard to look at Kansas City and think, man, they gave away Tyreek Hill, who potentially could be the MVP of the league this year.
Yeah. He should. I mean, it's really, this is a whole nother topic, but it's almost annoying how it's a guaranteed quarterback spot because it should be Tyreek Hill, 100%. Like it's gonna end up being Brock Purdy or Dak Prescott who have played well. Not saying they haven't, but they have phenomenal supporting cast. They have phenomenal play calling. They have great offensive lines. They're just kind of playing within the system. And then you have Tyreek Hill who might go over 2,000 yards receiving and probably won't even have a shot at winning it. Wild.
Yeah. Well, and and where was Miami really before he got there?
Yeah, well, Miami's got a lot of talent though. They got a lot of speed on that team, and they put a good team together. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Sticking, of course, with the NFL here, we talked about the Chargers. Obviously, brought up the Rams. The other team in town here. It's been an interesting season for the Rams. So I'm just curious: do you think the Rams have overachieved this year or underachieved?
I think they've overachieved based on what they did in the offseason. I was one of the, I don't know if I want to say the few, but I think the few that actually had them having a better season. I think a lot of people thought they were in full tank mode for Caleb. They were full rebuild. It was going to be a terrible defense. I mean, you look at who they gave. They traded Jalen Ramsey. They cut Bobby Wagner. They make all these moves. They didn't re-sign Greg Gaines and all these guys on the defensive line. So you literally had Aaron Donald. You had Ernest Jones at the linebacker, and you had Jordan Fuller at safety, and like that was it in terms of returning starters on defense. Then offense, what was Stafford going to look like coming back from injury? What was Kupp going to look like coming back from injury? What was Rob Havenstein looking like coming back? Everyone was coming back from injury on offense. So I think most people thought this was going to be a really, really bad team. I personally thought because the way the NFC was laid out, because of the quarterback play in the NFC, they could still viably play for a playoff spot and kind of have that ceiling of 9 or 10 wins, have that floor of 6 wins. So they're at 6 right now. 6-6, but I think in terms of national attention, they've definitely overachieved when people are like, oh, wow, look at these Rams who are actually a pretty damn good football team and kind of fun to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about Puka obviously earlier. He's been an unbelievable, pleasant surprise. I think even Kyron Williams has been great.
I like that running back they got.
He's been great for them.
I like him. I like him a lot.
Yeah, he's fantastic out of Notre Dame. And
Yeah, I got him on my fantasy team. He's killing it for me.
Yeah, it hurt when he was out those 4 weeks, and it hurt the Rams too. They lost, I think, 3 of those 4 games. But since he's been back in the lineup, they've been great. And they've got a lot of good pieces, and they're building obviously for 24. But if, like we've all been saying, and like you said, Billy, like you get to the dance, anything can happen. So they're right there, and they're well coached. Obviously, Sean McVay, I think, needs to be in that Coach of the Year consideration. I'm surprised he's not gotten more talk about it. I think Matthew Stafford statistically doesn't look as good, but if you watch the games and not just look at the stats, like he's playing some of his best ball and making the same throws that he's made his whole career. And how fun would it be, Billy, if we get a Rams-Lions playoff game, Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford at Ford Field?
Ooh, that would be awesome.
That would be fun.
That'd be fun.
That would be fun.
In LA, then I'd have to go.
Yeah. Ryan, do you think that Kupp's best days are behind him, or do you think that he can still get back to that, elite MVP type form?
I think he can still get back to it. You can tell maybe he's not 100% healthy. Obviously, with the emergence of Puka Nacua, they're not as reliant on him, which is a good thing. I mean, we saw last year, those first 8 weeks before he got hurt, how the offense was literally Cooper Kupp, and that was it. So it's good that they haven't needed him. We talked about it on our show just a few days ago, and it does look a little off, whether it's health, whether it's continuity with Stafford after missing, time this season off and on, whether it's is any age. I personally think, though, he'll be fine. He's still, has the ability, still has a talent level. When you see him run his routes, he's still a phenomenal route runner. He's going to be a coach one day. The guy's IQ is off the charts in terms of football knowledge. So I think he'll still be back. I don't think it's like a long window. I'm not saying this guy probably has like 5 years of greatness. It's probably, maybe another season, maybe 2, and then he'll start probably trending downwards. He is already 30. But I think he can still get back to that elite level.
Okay, good, because he's on one of my keeper teams, so I just want to make sure.
Oh God!
I hear you.
Well. Speaking of NFC, we got the Niners and the Eagles are the Super Bowl favorites. I'm gonna throw in the Lions right behind them, just because they're my team and I have to do that.
Throw them in.
Hey, you should. You're having a great year.
But which team from the AFC do you think is the favorite and has the best chance of making it in?
The AFC is so tough, man. It's so weird. Like, it's so loaded in terms of just, I think anyone can win it, but there's no elite team, because even the Chiefs have shown, chinks in the armor, obviously, with the offense struggling and their defense is playing a lot better. But Buffalo is on a down year. Obviously, Cincinnati now, no Joe Burrow. Jacksonville is, even with Trevor Lawrence, does anyone really believe in Jacksonville? I would say probably right now my leader in the clubhouse would be Baltimore. I think that's from top to bottom. They have the most talent. They're well coached. I mean, Harbaugh's been there 150 years, so they obviously have
I know.
the continuity with the coach. Yeah. The defense is always good. I think
he coached
He's always
Super Bowl
smash mouth.
III.
Exactly. I think he did that.
They're very well rounded. That's for sure.
So they're probably and the Rams play them this week actually. So we'll get a nice taste of what each team really looks like playing each other. But I would say probably Baltimore. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah. No,
Well, we're all
I-
NFC teams
I
here,
think so.
so it'd probably be producer of the show, Jags. AFC. We're just gonna go with Jags. Fuck it.
Well, I'm just curious, Ryan, because you said the Ravens, that's obviously a popular pick. Kansas City, no one's going to count out Mahomes, Reed, and Kelsey.
Mm-hmm.
But how come nobody really trusts Miami?
So they would be
it just feels that way.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think part of it they have yet to beat a top team, which I know a lot of people take stock in. Now they've played well in all their games that they've have won, and I think this is where they'll make that step to if they're going to be a true favorite is if that defense takes that next step, which it seems like they have gotten much better. Now they lose the young kid Jalen. I'm drawing a blank on his last name. They lose him to a torn Achilles, the pass rusher, which was a big loss. But they still have ton. I mean, they got Jalen Ramsey back from injury, Bradley Chubb obviously on the end. They got Vic Fangio's no slouch. Yeah, JPP, you're right. Vic Fangio's no slouch to the head coach. So if the defense gets better, I mean, I don't think anyone's questioning the offense. So it's just a matter of if that defense can get better. Because if it does, then I think you've got to tip your scales that way. But it's a good question because everyone's like, oh, they're a fun team. Like Mike McDaniel's is fun coach, but no one's really taking them like they're the favorite in the AFC. They're talented.
They're playing really good defense right now, so they might be getting it going at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they got a good roster. I mean, you look at building out a roster. They've definitely teams could take notes on kind of how they've done it. Basically, coach said, "This is what I want," and that's what they went out and got. So
if you're gonna
did that well.
If Miami's gonna be at the top right there, you got to have a defense to beat Miami, and the one defense that can probably have a good chance of stopping Miami, which you alluded to before, is Baltimore. That's probably the best defense in the AFC right now. So you definitely have to give them the edge.
And it comes down to who do you trust more, Lamar Jackson or Tua Tagovailoa? And I don't know if I trust either. That's the hard thing.
Yeah.
Like, do you trust either in the big game? Have either of them proven it yet?
And that's where you go defense.
I think the interesting thing with both those teams also is neither one of them have a running game that week in and week out you can really feel solid about. I think Baltimore probably a little more than Miami, but again, like you said, it's how much do you really trust Gus Edwards? How much do you really trust, Morster? I mean, these guys are not exactly,
Miami's got a
running backs.
Miami's got a Chan too, right? A Chain or Chan? I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce his name, but that guy's pretty good.
Yeah, but he's a little banged up, so
he's playing. He's back. So
yeah, he just came back, and schematically, I think you trust Miami's run game just in terms of what Mike McDaniel does. But yeah, you don't have that like true pedigree of a running back. I mean, Mostert, bless him, I don't want to knock on wood here, but the guy gets injured every single season. So is he going to make it the whole year? And then, you look at Baltimore and it's like they're basically a carousel running back every single season. And now it's Gus Edwards. So it's interesting. Yeah, there's not that true. The AFC from top to bottom, I think, is much, much better than the NFC. But in terms of elite team, the NFC has the elite teams when it comes down to just like singular teams.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Before we let you go, Ryan, just let me know, man. How bad was Deshaun Foster at UCLA? How bad was Deshaun Foster at Tustin High? Oh, yeah.
Dope.
Oh, Billy, we lost Billy. Dope, right? Dope. I got pleasure of seeing Deshaun when he was a senior when I was a freshman. I saw him the first game of the season. He was like a man amongst boys, man, just running over everybody. Obviously breaking records at UCLA. That's how I became a Panthers fan, because of Deshaun Foster. And man, what'd you think of him at UCLA?
That makes sense. Okay, I was like, how in the hell are you a Panthers fan? But that doesn't make sense.
No, the question is why in the hell are you a Panthers fan?
And I saw the shirt and I was like, oh, that's a dope Deshaun Foster. I didn't make the connection. Play with our boy Frosty Ruckers, so they go back.
Yep.
No, I mean, he's a legend. He's a running backs coach, great recruiter. I mean, you look at the running backs UCLA produces year in and year out. You got Joshua Kelly with the Chargers right now. You got Demetric Felton with the Browns. Obviously, Zach Charbonnet with Seattle. So he's doing great work as the coach. I mean, he's the guy. When you look at UCLA, the hope was, this was our hope at the LA Football Network, was that Chip Kelly could be good enough for 2 or 3 more seasons. And then the 2 assistant head coaches right now on offense are Jerry Neuheisel, son of Rick Neuheisel, who's a UCLA legend. He coaches receivers, and Deshaun Foster coaches running backs. You would hope that after 2 or 3 seasons, you promote one of those 2 guys to be the head coach as UCLA legacies, guys that love the program, guys that are younger, fired up. So Deshaun Foster still, I think, could be in the cards considering they kept Chip Kelly. We'll see if the program makes a better run, but yeah, Foster's a legend, and now it makes sense why you became a Panthers fan.
Yeah.
I was like,
Right,
Jake
man.
Delhomme, was that
There
your
it
calling
is.
card? I guess?
Right. Yeah.
Jake Delhomme, Steve
Yeah.
Smith.
Yeah.
Jake Delhomme,
I mean,
John Fox. No, yeah.
It still doesn't make sense, but at least it's fair.
Here's the funny thing too, is that Deshaun Foster actually went to my middle school too, CE UT. We were at UT. Then he went to Tustin High, and then, like I said, I followed him all the way through. And when the Panthers and the Jaguars were expansion teams, my brother and I didn't really have teams at the time. So my dad was like, "Oh, you guys need teams." So that's how we became Panthers and Jags fans. So here we are, you know. But yeah.
Hey, I mean, you and half of LA. That's how half of LA became NFL fans.
Yeah.
They just chose
Wait
a player on a team.
Second. Wait a second. Man, your dad did you dirty. He could have given you guys any teams in the league to root for. And he gave you guys the Panthers and the Jags.
Yeah.
You
guys must have been terrible kids.
Pops, man, that's how he did us. Yeah, that's how he did.
There were a lot of other UCLA players in the league you guys could have followed.
That's what I'm saying, right?
I mean, Troy Aikman went to the Cowboys. You could have been a Cowboys fan.
Man, you gotta, one of these days you gotta tell your dad, what did you do this to me for?
I know, but I mean, at the end of the day, like, Deshaun was kind of like the first guy that I knew that actually went to the league. Frosty, there's Chris Chester, Sam Baker, all those guys went to, the league as well. And, he was the first guy. Deshaun was the first guy to make it there when I didn't have a team. So that's kind of how it all came to be.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's funny. That's kind of how I became an Eagles fan, not a high school connection, but, when I was, kind of, young, getting into sports, getting into football, I was a big basketball guy. So it took me a little bit longer to get into football. But around that time, of course, you remember, Ryan, LA didn't have a football team. At that time, when I was a kid, the Raiders were in Oakland and the Rams were in St. Louis. So I was starting to get into football, and there wasn't a local team to root for. And I just remember watching football games and whatever. I fell in love with Randall Cunningham. And that's how I became an Eagles fan, because I didn't know who to root for. There wasn't a local team. I'm watching football. I'm seeing this guy, Randall Cunningham, and he's just doing things out there that no one else is doing. He's talented. He's flashy. He's running around. He's got the one glove on, which is just kind of like cool. Like, what is this guy doing? Yeah. And that's where, that's how this happened.
That's it. Hey,
yeah,
we with the dope Kelly green jerseys, that was a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't need to hear Billy's lying story. So anyway,
Barry
wrap us
Sanders,
up.
that's all you got to know.
I'm from Denver, so I'm a Broncos fan because it was actually my home team. So I think he's
okay. That's good. That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Ryan, before we let you go, let the people know where they can find you, social media, all that good stuff.
Yeah, fellas, thanks for having me. It was a blast. You can find me on Twitter at Ryan Dyrud, LAFB. All of our LA football content is just at LAFBnetwork.com. Got 6 different YouTube channels, all team specific. Just search USC LAFB, UCLA LAFB, Rams LAFB, Chargers LAFB, or LAFB Network. And that's that. So thanks for having me, fellas.
Yeah. No, thanks for joining us. It was a lot of fun. And we, of course, want to thank everybody who listens to the Matter Stats podcast, and check out Ryan, check out the Matter Stats podcast where you get your podcast. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on, I guess I should say X, IG, our YouTube page. And we'll see you guys next week.
Peace.
Go Blue.